Hey there, we're about to take a look at a quiet, kind of invisible engine that powers almost every single website you visit. It's something you use constantly, even if you've never actually heard its name before. I mean, have you ever really stopped to think about that? You know, how a new comment just appears in your feed, or how a map can update your route in real time. The page itself doesn't reload, but things are definitely changing. So, how does that happen? Well, it's not magic, but it is really clever. See, for any of those dynamic changes to happen, your browser needs a plan. It needs a kind of living blueprint of the page it's showing you. And that blueprint is exactly what we're going to explore. So, yeah, let's dive into this idea of a living blueprint. Because this is really the fundamental structure that makes the modern interactive web even possible. Think about it like this. If you have a script, some JavaScript for example, and its job is to change something on a page, like making a button turn red, well, first, it needs a way to find that button. It needs a map, a logical model of the page that it can read and interact with. Without this model, the page would just be a static block of code, totally unchangeable once it's loaded. Okay, so what is this blueprint actually called? It does have a formal name, and once you hear it broken down, it makes perfect sense. It's called the Document Object Model, or what pretty much everyone calls it, the DOM. At its heart, the DOM is a programming interface, an API, that basically translates a web document into a structure that code can actually understand. It's the critical bridge that lets scripts get in there and alter pretty much everything on the page. Let's just break that name down. The document part, that's easy. It's just the web page you're looking at. Object, now this is the key. Your browser sees every single piece of that page, every heading, every paragraph, every button, and treats each one as a separate object. And finally, model is just how the browser organizes all of those objects into a logical structure, which happens to look a lot like a tree. This image shows you that translation perfectly. Over on the left, you've got the raw HTML code that a developer writes, and on the right, that's how the browser actually sees it, building it into what's called a DOM tree. The main HTML tag becomes the trunk of the tree, and every other element just branches off from there. This is that living blueprint. And just like a family tree, this whole model is based on relationships. A node, or an element, that holds another one is called a parent. The one inside is the child. Nodes that are at the same level, sharing a parent, are siblings. And the big one at the very top, the one with no parent, that's the root. This simple hierarchy is how a script can navigate the whole page and find the exact thing it needs to change. So, the DOM is a model, this tree structure. But it's not just a static map. Its real power comes from the fact that it's a dynamic interface. It lets scripts actually do things. Like we said, the DOM is an API. And all an API is really is a set of rules that lets different software programs talk to each other. So the DOM provides the specific rules and commands that let a script talk to the web document to find things, add things, change things, or even delete things from that tree. The whole thing works in a pretty simple three-step process. First, the browser reads the HTML file and builds that DOM tree inside its memory. Second, a script running on the page gets access to that tree. And third, that script can now use the DOM's rules to work its magic, changing text, adding a new photo, or taking a button away completely. And the result of all this behind-the-scenes work? It's the dynamic, living web pages that we just take for granted every day. You know, before the DOM, a web page was basically like a printed document. Once it loaded, it was fixed, that was it. But with the DOM, a web page becomes a living thing. Its content, its structure, its style, all of it can be changed at any moment. That's what creates those interactive experiences that really define the modern web. And this idea is so important it's worth saying again. Scripts can only manipulate things on the page because of the document object model. It's not just one way to make pages dynamic. For all intents and purposes, it's the only way. Every single time you see a page change without reloading, you can bet the DOM is at work. But why was it so important to create this one specific model? I mean, why couldn't every browser just do its own thing? Well, for a little while, they did. Back in the early days of the web, during what they called the browser wars, you had companies like Netscape and Microsoft, and they each had their own totally incompatible models. It was an absolute nightmare for developers who had to write complex, different code for each browser. To fix this mess, the World Wide Web Consortium, or W3C, stepped in and created the DOM as a universal standard, a common language for everyone. And the impact of that was just enormous. By creating one standard blueprint, the DOM meant that developers could finally build one version of a website and know that it would work for everyone, on any browser. It really paved the way for the complex, reliable web applications we all depend on today. So, I'll leave you with a final thought to chew on. Just imagine for a second a web without that standard, without that living blueprint. Every interactive map, every social media feed, every single application you use inside your browser, they would either be completely different or they might not exist at all. It's the invisible standard that truly changed everything.